There is a kind of hush that only belongs to night, not the absence of sound, but a presence, a deep, enveloping stillness that settles over rooftops, forests, fields, and rivers as if the world itself were cupping its hands around a sleeping child. The sky, infinite yet intimate, stretches overhead like a great dark ocean. You could spend a lifetime learning its stories, of hydrogen burning itself into helium, of constellations carved by myth and migration. And still, each night, find yourself astonished by a single detail. The stars do not hold steady. They quiver. They flicker. They tremble in place as if the heavens were shivering. Why? Why should these enormous furnaces, burning with unimaginable brilliance light years away, appear so fragile from where we stand? The answer, gracefully enough, begins not out in space but here, in the thin, invisible skin of gas that wraps our world. But before we dive into explanations, let us linger, just for a moment longer, in the wonder of the question. There is something oddly human about the fact that the universe, to our eyes, is never perfectly still. Our own lives are rarely steady. Our emotions flicker. Our thoughts waver. Our confidence grows and shrinks like a candle inside the wind. Perhaps that is why we find comfort in the quivering torchlight of the night sky. It mirrors the flickering inside ourselves. Scientifically, this flickering has a name: stellar scintillation. To understand it, we need to follow a photon from the heart of a star all the way to the back of your eye. Imagine a star, massive, ancient, boiling with nuclear fusion. In its core, hydrogen atoms are forced together to become helium, releasing staggering amounts of energy in the process. That energy pushes outward in the form of radiation, photons, which bounce and jostle their way through the stellar interior for thousands of years before finally reaching open space. Once free, these photons travel in straight, unwavering lines at 300,000 kilometers per second. No flicker, no dance, no tremor. Their journey may take 4 years, if the star is as close as Alpha Centauri, 300 years, or 3,000. But in all that time racing through the vacuum, they do not waver. Then, in the final 100 or so kilometers, everything changes. The photons meet Earth's atmosphere, a great churning stew of gases bathed in sunlight during the day and almost invisible at night. Despite this apparent transparency, the atmosphere is full of turbulence, rising pockets of warm air, sinking columns of cooler air, gusts, eddies, and jet streams twisting overhead like unseen rivers. Each pocket of air varies slightly in temperature, pressure, and density, which means it also varies in how much it bends light, a property called the refractive index. As the starlight passes through these moving pockets, it is bent this way and that, not in a straight line, but in a slightly jagged, constantly shifting path. Picture shining a laser through a bubbling pot of water. The beam will jiggle and skip unpredictably because the water is rising and boiling in uneven currents. Something similar, though more subtle, happens to starlight entering the sky. Each bend is microscopic, but accumulated over thousands of slight deflections, it causes the apparent position and brightness of the star to jitter. To our eyes, which cannot track those tiny motions individually, the result appears as a gentle flickering, twinkle, twinkle, the sky's own nervous heartbeat. Interestingly, not all stars twinkle equally. Stars lower on the horizon often seem to flicker more violently than those high overhead. This is because their light has to slice through a far greater thickness of atmosphere, taking a slanted path through colder, hotter, denser, and thinner layers, like someone running diagonally across a storm rather than walking straight beneath it. On a perfectly calm night, rare but magical, the air can become so still that even bright stars near the horizon appear steady. Conversely, When winds roar in the upper atmosphere, even stars near the zenith can flicker ferociously. Because of these disturbances, astronomers have always fought a kind of battle, not against the stars, but against the very air that keeps them alive. Early stargazers accepted twinkling as a given and even wove it into folklore. Flickering stars meant changing weather, or messages from gods, or the spirits of ancestors winking at the living. But the scientific revolution brought new aspirations. Galileo wanted clarity. Newton wanted precision. So humanity learned to climb. Telescopes were hoisted onto mountains where the air was thinner, steadier, and colder. Even then, beautiful as the images were, some flicker remained. The logical next step was bold. Why not leave the atmosphere altogether? In 1990, NASA launched the Hubble Space Telescope into orbit roughly 550 kilometers above Earth's surface. There, floating in near vacuum, Hubble saw a sky unlike any human who ever lived. Utterly crystalline, dead calm, no flickering, no trembling. The stars were pinpoints so sharp they looked like mathematical symbols rather than real objects. Ironically, though, many astronomers later confessed that they missed the twinkle. The human eye grew up alongside that trembling light. Removing it felt, in some small way, like trimming the mystery from the soul of the night. But this is only half the story. Once we understand that most flickering is atmospheric, another question rises. Are there stars that truly flicker on their own? The beautiful answer is yes. Some stars really do wax and wane in brightness, pulsing like beating hearts. These are known as variable stars, and they come in many kinds. Cepheid variables, for instance, expand and contract over periods of days or weeks, growing brighter and dimmer in a rhythmic pattern so reliable that astronomers use them as standard candles to measure distances across the galaxy. Mira variables pulse far more slowly, sometimes taking over a year to complete a single cycle. Other stars flicker because they orbit close companions in binary systems, where one star may periodically eclipse the other from our point of view. In still other cases, disks of dust or giant planets may drift across a star's face, causing brief dips in brightness which we can detect using modern instruments. Dips so faint that while they do not register to the naked eye, they whisper clues about worlds we might never otherwise find. And so, as strange as it seems, twinkling embodies both illusion and truth. On one hand, the stars appear to flicker because of imperfections in our window onto the universe. We see the world through a shimmering lens of air. On the other, some stars truly do change, sometimes gently, sometimes catastrophically, in ways that tell us about their internal struggles, companions, or life cycles. The twinkle of a star is therefore not a distraction from science. It is a starting point. It is the universe waving at us, inviting curiosity. Tonight, then, let us honor that invitation. Lie back. Let your body sink into the Earth's slow gravity the way starlight sinks into your eyes. Feel the oscillation between scientific knowing and poetic not knowing. Atmospheric turbulence is pure physics. And yet, there is also something spiritual in the way the cosmos refuses to stand still. Maybe that flicker is not a flaw but a prayer, a reminder that everything which shines must struggle, everything which endures must tremble. In the chapters ahead, we will learn how astronomers measure flicker, how they tame it with adaptive optics and interferometry, how the thin, wavering letters of starlight encode information about temperature, mass, age, rotation. But for now, remain here in this cradle of nighttime wonder. Let your breathing slow to match the rhythm of the sky. Let your thoughts soften. Let the stars bloom and flicker overhead like countless distant candles. Breathe and drift and listen. Somewhere up there, in the trembling dark, a tale is beginning. To observe the night sky is, in many ways, To observe our own limitations. We stand upon a restless planet, bruised by weather and time, look upward, and see not a perfect, eternal realm, but a sky in motion, stars that tremble, planets that wander, meteors that flare and vanish. There was a time when human beings believed the heavens were the embodiment of absolute permanence, a crystalline sphere revolving with celestial purpose. The fact that stars twinkle breaks that illusion in the gentlest possible manner. If perfection is what we sought, we did not find it. Instead, we found motion, and in motion, we discovered meaning. Philosophers from antiquity to the modern day have looked to the sky as a mirror of existence. Heraclitus, the Greek thinker who wrote that everything flows and nothing stands still, might well have written those words with a flickering star in mind. Even something that appears fixed, lodged in a tapestry of constellations, is, at closer inspection, in motion. The twinkle reminds us that we never perceive things directly as they are. Rather, we see through layers, through air, through time, through our own emotional interpretations. The star is not the flicker. The flicker is the way the world interprets the star. This realization has haunted poets, mystics, and scientists alike. When Shakespeare wrote, "The stars are fire," he did not describe atomic fusion, but human passion. When Emily Dickinson spoke of stars as punctuation marks in the dark, she turned them into a kind of language the sky speaks. Yet neither poet saw the stars for what they truly are. They saw the twinkle and interpreted it through the lens of their time. That flicker is not only a physical phenomenon of light bending through pockets of spinning air, it is also a conceptual metaphor, a symbol of permanence trying to express itself through impermanence. Even today, with our equations and satellites and spectrographs, we remain deeply human. We say we study the stars, but in truth, we study what reaches us from the stars, filtered and trembling. Our comprehension is never complete. This idea, that knowledge is always partial, uncertain, flickering, sits at the very heart of epistemology, the theory of how we know what we know. The philosopher Karl Popper reminded us that science itself is not about certainty, but about falsification and approximation. How fitting, then, that the objects we study in science should appear to flicker, as if to demonstrate visually the very principle of uncertainty that philosophy demands. From this perspective, the twinkle becomes something holy, not in a religious sense necessarily, but in a humanistic one. It is a reminder of humility. No matter how precise our instruments, how bold our explanations, how powerful our telescopes, we are still creatures who observe through flickering air. Our tools grow sharper, our atmosphere remains unruly. The philosophers of the past believed the heavens were perfect and the earth imperfect, that motion and change belong to our corrupt world, while eternity and stasis belong to the divine realm above. Twinkling disproves that dichotomy. It tells us, even the sky shakes, even constellations, those grand emblems of myth carved since Babylonian times, shimmer around the edges because we ourselves shimmer. The boundary between the heavenly and earthly is porous. To accept this is not to despair, it is to mature. A child demands certainty, definition, and absolute clarity. An adult learns to live with ambiguity, motion, and shimmering. At some point, we recognize that the world does not stand still for us, and neither should our expectations. Thus, when we look up at a flickering star, we are not witnessing a failure of perception. We are witnessing perception itself. The philosopher Simone Weil once wrote, "Absolute attention is prayer." Perhaps to give absolute attention to a twinkling star is a form of prayer, not to a deity, but to the beauty of imperfection, to the richness that comes from not knowing. Consider, for a moment, that long journey of starlight. Thousands or even millions of years spent racing across nothingness, unbroken, unwavering, until it finally enters Earth's atmosphere and trembles in its last heartbeat before touching your retina. From a cosmic perspective, the flicker occupies only a fraction of the journey, and yet it entirely shapes our experience of the star. There is a lesson here, which philosophers love to repeat in many forms. Sometimes the final moment is the moment that defines everything that came before it. Our interpretations twist and shimmer because we live in that final moment, the moment of uncertainty and reception, not the endless certainty of deep space. This is why the twinkle, to a thoughtful observer, is not an annoyance, but a revelation. Twinkling also speaks to us of distance. We do not see stars as they are, but as they were, long ago, centuries, millennia in the past. The flicker reminds us that the past is unsettled, alive, vibrating. Every tremble of light in the sky is the past reaching into our present, not as a fixed inscription, but as a living ripple. The philosopher Henri Bergson argued that time is not a series of frozen instants but a flowing, trembling continuity, like a candle flame that seems to flicker even when it burns steadily. This is exactly how starlight behaves. It may be steady in itself, but our reality turns it into a flickering flame. We are bathed, nightly, in trembling time, and we respond in kind. Human culture has always reflected that trembling. Astrologers built complex systems on the belief that stars govern fate. Sailors used flickering Polaris to find their way across pitching oceans. Lovers confessed their hearts under twinkling skies. Children sang "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star," absorbing in rhyme the profound mystery of flicker long before they understood science. The universality of these experiences flows from that moment of perceptual instability. Had the stars appeared perfectly steady to the naked eye, would we have felt the same magic? Would poetry have blossomed so richly? The uncertainty of Twinkle becomes a canvas on which emotion and story are painted. Modern philosophy, too, returns to this. Thinkers like Merleau-Ponty remind us that perception is an active process. We do not passively receive the world, we participate in constructing it. Twinkling is not simply external. It is the interaction between external light and the internal act of perception. When the star flickers, so too does our mind, trying to stabilize the image, understand it, make sense of its variations. That mental effort becomes emotional texture. A perfectly static star might be a fact, but a flickering star is an experience, and experiences are what consciousness is made of. Thus, the philosophical power of celestial flicker lies in what it symbolizes: impossibility of perfect knowledge, inevitability of motion, necessity of humility, beauty of impermanence. If we can look up at a flickering star and accept that we do not see it as it truly is, and yet still find it radiant, meaningful, worthy of wonder, perhaps we can do the same with ourselves and with one another. We, too, are flickering beings, inconstant, evolving, sometimes bright, sometimes dim, and yet, from the right distance, from the right perspective, we shine magnificently. To close this meditation, imagine yourself again lying on grass. The night is cool, the world is quiet. Above you, tens of thousands of stars flicker. You know now, intellectually, that the flickering is caused by turbulence in the atmosphere, by bending waves of refractive index, by layers of moving gas. You also know that some stars flicker of their own accord, shifting brightness across months or years. But beyond all that, you feel something else. That flicker is a message, not from the stars to you, but from existence itself. A message that says, nothing is truly still, but in motion you will find wonder. That motion is not chaos but dance. That uncertainty is not failure but mystery. The star trembles, And in that trembling, your heart remembers what it means to be alive. And so you close your eyes. The flicker now occurs behind your eyelids, turning into the slow pulse of dreaming. Somewhere in the distant reaches of the universe, a star collapses, or explodes, or gives birth to planets. Somewhere closer, high in our atmosphere, the wind shears and swirls, bending the last rays of light before they reach you. You drift between states, alert and drowsy, knowing and not knowing, just as the starlight drifts between vibration and stillness. Twinkle, whisper the heavens. Twinkle, responds your breath. Sleep now, for part 3 awaits, where we will sink deeper into this trembling cosmos and ask not merely what we are seeing, but why the act of seeing changes us at all. If part 2 taught us that the flicker of starlight reflects the trembling nature of human perception, then part 3 requires us to look deeper, not only at how we see, but what the starlight is trying to say. For twinkling is not merely poetic disturbance, it is also, accidentally, the gateway to one of humanity's greatest scientific realizations. Light carries information. When we learn to read that information, we no longer see mere points of flickering brightness. We start to understand entire histories unfolding behind each shimmer. Ancient eyes looked up and saw chaos patterned into constellations. But with the arrival of modern instruments in the 19th century, light itself became a language, and astronomers became translators. They discovered that a star's light, when passed through a narrow slit and spread out into a spectrum, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, was not smooth. It was broken up by dark lines, thin as threads. These were called Fraunhofer lines, and though they appeared insignificant, they were revolutionary. Each line was the signature of a chemical element, blocking a particular wavelength of light. From these scattered dark interruptions, scientists could read what stars were made of: hydrogen, helium, calcium, iron, many of the same elements found here on Earth. This was a profound philosophical shift. For most of human history, the heavens were believed to be composed of a mysterious, perfect substance called the quintessence, totally unlike anything found on Earth. Stars were heavenly, humans were worldly, the substances were different. But with spectroscopy, the reading of light, that separation vanished. The elements that made up the stars were the very same that made up our mortal bodies. We were not looking at a different kind of creation. We were looking at ourselves, flung across light years. Stardust was not a metaphor, it was a fact. To realize that a twinkling point of light holds chemical signatures is to realize that the universe is constantly speaking, not with words, but with wavelengths. Each flutter of brightness that catches our eye from a dark field carries within it stories of temperature, density, age, motion. If a star is moving away from us, its light is shifted towards the red end of the spectrum. If it is approaching, towards the blue. Thus, every tremble is not chaotic but encoded. Philosophy asks, can meaning arise from seeming randomness? Astronomy answers, yes. What seems like noise to the naked eye becomes profound structure when properly interpreted. But there is a second, deeper revolution embedded here. Once we knew stars spoke via light, we asked, how does the light originate? The answer demanded we abandon ancient metaphors of fire and embrace a new physics, that of atoms and nuclei, realms invisible but no less real. At the heart of every shining star lies a furnace where nuclear fusion occurs. The force of gravity pulls, crushing hydrogen atoms together. When they merge into helium, mass is lost and converted into energy, following Einstein's famous equation, E=mc2. That energy is light, pure, shining, star-born radiance. And here philosophy encounters one of its most provocative ideas. The universe, at its core, is not solid but energetic. The stars are not made of gold or crystal or divine essence. They are engines converting matter into light, liberating trapped energy in monumental quantities. To think about flickering starlight, then, is to witness this conversion, matter becoming meaning across time and space. When light trembles at the end of its journey through our atmosphere, it is as if the universe is whispering, "I have traveled a great distance to reach you. Read me carefully. I am made of origins." Because light carries so much information, astronomers sometimes describe their work not as looking into space, but as listening. A star does not speak in syllables or sentences, but in fluctuating brightness and spectral lines, notes in a cosmic symphony. Some notes are steady, others pulse. Some arrive red-shifted by distance, others blue-shifted by motion. To interpret these notes is to translate the universe. The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein once suggested that the limits of our language are the limits of our world. If that is so, then every expansion of our ability to read starlight enlarges the boundaries of existence itself. Still, one might ask, why does the light flicker at all? If it is so rich with information, why does it not travel to us in a smooth and stately beam? Here we return to the reality of our position. Stellar light is pure when it begins, but we receive it through layers of interference. The atmosphere, our optic nerves, our linguistic frameworks. The twinkle is partly physical, the atmospheric turbulence that bends light, and partly epistemic, the wobble that occurs whenever a finite mind tries to grasp infinite data. In that sense, flickering is not a flaw to be removed. It is a natural consequence of situating ourselves within a living, breathing world. Absolute stillness belongs only to vacuum and mathematics. Real experience, relational, alive, flickers. In modern times, astronomers have begun to develop incredible technologies to undo the flicker. Adaptive optics, for instance, use lasers sent into the sky to create artificial reference stars. Telescopes split starlight into thousands of channels, monitor how the atmosphere distorts those channels in real time, and then flex a mirror many times per second to counteract the fluttering. The goal is to regain clarity, to peel away the atmospheric mask. And these technologies truly work. Stars that once wavered now appear sharp, still, successful. Yet even as they applaud their breakthroughs, many astronomers privately confess a strange nostalgia. Part of the romance is lost when the stars no longer tremble. That nostalgia matters, for it reminds us that science does not replace mystery, it deepens it. The more clearly we understand how stars shine, how fusion rages, how light encodes, how the atmosphere shimmers, the more remarkable it becomes that we are here at all, conscious and curious, able to look upward and ask why. The twinkle does not disappear with knowledge, it transforms into a kind of spiritual significance. As we decode chemical lines and redshifts, we discover something increasingly astonishing. We are not separate from the stars we study. We are composed of their ashes. Long before they flickered for our eyes, they exploded, scattering heavy elements into space. Those elements drifted, coalesced, and eventually formed planets, oceans, bodies, minds. Thus, when we look at a flickering star, we are, in a quiet sense, looking back at the origin of ourselves. That realization carries emotional density. Suddenly the flicker becomes personal. It is not simply a physical disturbance in the atmosphere, nor just an epistemic symbol of uncertainty. It is a reminder of ancestry. The flicker is our genetic heritage glowing across space. Maya Angelou once wrote that we should approach life with the attitude of a child watching the stars, hungry, awed, reverent. The flicker urges that mode of being. It instructs us to keep faith with wonder, to resist cynicism, to remain open to astonishment. As part 3 draws to a close, lie back once more and imagine a single star on the horizon, Perhaps it is Arcturus, or Vega, or Betelgeuse. Its light travels through space for centuries. It reaches Earth and is instantly distorted by the ever-moving air. It trembles, becoming a flicker of brightness in your eye. Instinctively, you interpret it, not just scientifically, but emotionally. Something in your chest stirs. You cannot explain why, but in that flicker, you feel connected to everything, to ancient astronomers charting the heavens, to poets dreaming under the same sky, to atoms forged in nuclear furnaces beyond imagining. The universe does not speak human language. It speaks light. Light flickers. You understand. That, in itself, is a miracle. There comes a moment, when watching the night sky, that one realizes how strange it is to speak of permanence at all. A star that feels eternal to the naked eye, twinkling faithfully in the same corner of the heavens, year after year, is in fact engaged in a slow act of disappearance. Our lives are too brief to sense it, but every star is burning itself away, converting its own body into radiance. To shine is, inherently, to diminish. In that sense, starlight is not only a symbol of endurance, but also of sacrifice, something vast and incandescent giving itself up in order to be seen. This idea, that shining equals vanishing, holds a peculiar emotional power. It reminds us that the flicker we witness is not a looped performance, but a procession. Light leaves the star, which grows infinitesimally lighter each second. The light reaches us, trembles in the atmosphere, flickers for an instant on the back of our eye, and then disappears into memory. The entire cosmos is not static, but evaporating. To witness the flicker is to witness loss unfolding so slowly we mistake it for stillness. Philosophers have long grappled with the meaning of disappearance. The Buddhist concept of anicca, or impermanence, insists that everything which arises also passes away, from thoughts to empires to galaxies. The twinkling of starlight illustrates that truth in miniature. Not only because stars themselves are mortal, but because our perception of them is also momentary and unstable. One gust of wind high in the upper atmosphere and the star brightens. Another gust and it dims. The flicker becomes a visual metaphor for the fact that reality is composed of instants that cannot be held or frozen. This concept becomes even more poignant when we consider that some of the stars we see each night may have already died. Their light, having left centuries or millennia ago, continues traveling long after the source has ceased to exist. We, living in the present, witness a past that refuses to vanish. The French philosopher Roland Barthes once likened photographs to messages without a code, capturing a moment that is gone yet somehow still here. Starlight functions in a similar way, a message from a vanished moment, flickering on into our awareness. In noticing the flicker, we are, in a sense, bearing witness to ghosts. Beautiful, burning ghosts that once were. If the stars are disappearing, and if their light is a record of that gentle vanishing, then what does that say about us, the watchers? What does it mean to spend our lives beneath a sky filled with slow collapses, distant disintegrations, and yet feel comfort instead of despair? Perhaps it means that we, too, were born to vanish, but not without meaning. In this, the stars are not only our ancestors in a literal, elemental sense, they are also our teachers in the art of letting go. No star resists its burning. No star clutches at its light. It gives, it dissolves. It radiates itself across space and time, and is content to flicker in someone else's sky long after it has ceased to exist. That kind of legacy, brief, luminous, incomplete, is the most any of us can hope to offer. And yet we so often resist it. We long for permanence, for clear outcomes, for moments that do not fade. But the flickering star teaches us something else, that clarity is not always the highest form of truth. Sometimes the most honest experiences are those that shimmer around the edges, memories that don't stay still, relationships that resist definition, futures that cannot be forecast. The star is not less beautiful because it flickers. In fact, it may be more beautiful. The instability invites us to pay closer attention, to wonder more deeply, to soften the edges of our own expectations. What if we lived as the stars do? Not in denial of disappearance, but in luminous defiance of it, knowing that each gesture, each breath, each act of kindness or curiosity might outlive us in some flickering form? There is something sacred in that thought. Not sacred in a religious sense necessarily, but in the sense of fullness, of recognizing that even impermanent things can be complete. A flicker is not a failure of light. It is the way light dances through uncertainty. In the same way, a life is not diminished by its brevity. It is defined by its capacity to shine in moments. In this way, starlight becomes a philosophy, not just of disappearance, but of dignity. We do not know how long we will shine, but we know that we can, and that someone, somewhere, may one day look up and feel a flicker because of something we once were. At some point, all stars fade. Some collapse inward into dense silence, white dwarfs, neutron stars, black holes. Others erupt outward in brilliant supernovae, scattering their elements into the interstellar sea. In both cases, they give. What remains is not the shape of the star, but the echo of its generosity. The flicker that once was becomes the seed of new planets, new lives, new questions. That is how the universe works, through cycles, through impermanence, through light that refuses to disappear even after its source is gone. And here on Earth, under the shimmering veil of atmosphere, we are allowed, just for a while, to witness that process in miniature, every night. So the next time you look up and see a flickering star, don't rush to explain it away. Don't reduce it to refraction or optics or turbulence, though those are true. Instead, let it be what it is, a flicker, a brief, imperfect, radiant event. Let it remind you that everything you see is already part of what is fading, and that you are, miraculously, here to see it. Let it remind you that to exist at all is to flicker, to tremble, to matter in motion, to become light for someone else's sky. And as your eyes begin to close, and the stars blur into soft points of memory, let yourself disappear for a while, too. Into rest, into dream, into that beautiful space where nothing needs to last forever to be real. The flicker has done its work. You have witnessed the sky, and the sky, in turn, has witnessed you. There comes a strange moment in every long night of stargazing when the sky stops feeling like something above you and starts feeling like something inside you. It is no longer a distant ceiling, but a mirror of consciousness, vast, dark, wildly layered. The stars, scattered like nerves firing through a dreaming mind, flicker with a kind of ancient intelligence. In that moment, you begin to feel that perhaps the real purpose of the sky is not to present itself as a physical spectacle, but to awaken a certain kind of attention within you, the kind of attention that is patient, contemplative, brave enough to sit with mystery, the flicker of starlight, which we once tried so hard to explain away through science or poetry, now becomes a simple invitation. Look deeper, not deeper into the heavens, but deeper into yourself. For most of human history, people looked at the sky not to understand stars, but to understand what it means to be alive. They told stories in constellations not because Orion and Cassiopeia truly arch above us with mythic purpose, but because those stories allowed them to hold a kind of truth about destiny, bravery, longing, grief. The sky was a theater for the invisible forces shaping human hearts. Over time, science replaced myth. Yet strangely, The emotion persisted. Even the most rational astronomers confess that something stirs inside them when they stand alone beneath a field of trembling light. Though they know the spectral lines and parallax equations and lifetimes of main sequence stars, they still feel, in the deepest quiet, that the sky is alive with some kind of message. It whispers not with language, but with flicker. What, then, is the message in part 5 of our long journey toward sleep? Perhaps this: that darkness itself is not empty. We spend our lives trying to escape darkness, literal and metaphorical, afraid that it means danger, despair, oblivion. But when you lie back under the genuine darkness of a star-strewn night, you realize something beautifully subversive. Darkness is full. It is rich with meaning, motion, birth, and death. Within it hang stars being born in nebulous clouds, stars dying in catastrophic explosions, planets spinning, light traveling, galaxies colliding, and all that drama hidden behind the soft veil of night. The flicker you see overhead is not a flaw in perception. It is the heartbeat of a living universe revealed through atmosphere and time. To accept that flicker is to accept that darkness speaks, and that you are part of its dialogue. This recognition is not intellectual alone. It changes how you feel. Your breathing slows. Your thoughts stretch out, grow quieter, more tender. You begin to notice rhythms in yourself that mirror celestial rhythms. How your attention flares and dims, how your emotions swell and calm, how your sense of purpose pulses with uncertainty, just as stars do. The flickering sky becomes not an object of observation, but a kind of mentor, teaching you how to pulse without fear, how to glow without needing to be steady, how to exist without fixing yourself into something rigid and permanent. In the flicker, you learn to trust the beauty of instability. To truly learn this lesson from the flickering sky, one must surrender a very human impulse, the need to make everything clear, bright, and under control. When you look up at the stars, you enter a realm where clarity is overrated and mystery is foundational. You do not solve the sky, you dwell in it. You let each tremble of starlight remind you that perfection is not the goal of existence. Growth takes place in hesitation, in ambiguity, in the space between understanding and unknowing. This is why children intuitively fall in love with stars, not because they comprehend astronomy, but because they sense, at a wordless level, that the universe is alive with questions, and that those questions are invitations rather than threats. Somewhere along the way, adulthood teaches us to fear doubt. The sky gently teaches us how to admire it again. Sometimes, watching that flickering field above, you begin to feel that the sky is not truly separate from you, that perhaps consciousness, your own awareness, is itself a kind of night sky, where thoughts light up briefly, pulse, vanish, only to be replaced by other flickering thoughts. In meditation traditions, this is precisely how the mind is described, not a stable structure, but a streaming cosmos of sensations, perceptions, memories, dreams, each appearing and disappearing. Some spiritual teachers even refer to the eyes as the small sky, reflecting the larger sky above. In that sense, every moment of stargazing is also a moment of self-gazing. The flicker you observe out there is mirrored by the flicker within. Viewed this way, insomnia becomes less an enemy and more an opportunity, a time when you can lie quietly in bed, listening to the murmur of your own thoughts. Just as one watches flickering stars without trying to control them, let them tremble, let them come and go, let them speak in their strange atmospheric language. Eventually, a kind of peace arrives, not because your thoughts have stopped, but because you have stopped resisting their natural motion. So too with the stars. Peace comes not by demanding they shine steadily, but by accepting the beauty of their stuttering radiance. There is another layer, though, the creative one. Throughout history, some of the most powerful works of art, literature, and philosophy emerged from long moments of stargazing. Vincent van Gogh painted the starry night not from astronomical accuracy, but from emotional fidelity. He painted the way the sky felt, the way the stars seemed to swirl and flicker with almost unbearable passion. That flicker became brushstroke. Likewise, when composers like Debussy or Holst wrote music about planets and constellations, they transformed celestial flicker into sound. The universe flickers, and the human spirit responds by creating. Our art is a continuation of that cosmic trembling. We flicker back. Perhaps that is the great secret the stars have been keeping from us, that flickering is a conversation, not a signal. Stars do not simply beam light across space, they invite relationship. They shimmer in ways that catch our attention and ask something of us. Don't just observe, feel. Don't just measure, wonder. Don't just exist. Burn for a while, even if the burning makes you tremble. Because to tremble is not to be weak, it is to be alive and open. Eventually, dawn will come, the stars will fade. Their flicker, potent during the depths of night, will be swallowed by blue light scattered through the atmosphere. But if you have truly paid attention, you will carry that flicker inside you long after it disappears from the sky. You will move through your days with a softness sharpened by some cosmic truth. You will understand that everything solid is secretly shimmering, that what looks permanent is already in the process of becoming something else. That light must tremble in order to find its way to you. And when night falls again, you will return to the sky not as a stranger seeking spectacle, but as a friend returning to a conversation. There are nights when the sky is not a spectacle but a presence, not something we look at, but something we lean into, as if it were gently leaning back into us. During those hours, long after ordinary thoughts have gone quiet, a deeper kind of awareness begins to stir. You might find yourself breathing in rhythm with nothing in particular, and yet feel uncannily synchronized with everything. Flickering stars overhead, moving clouds at the fringes of darkness, some distant hum of wind far above the rooftops. It all seems woven together by a force you cannot name. Ancient philosophers called that force gravity, but not merely in a physical sense. They sensed a kind of spiritual gravity, too. The subtle pull that draws your attention inward even as your eyes gaze outward. This inner gravity is strongest not when life is loud, but when it becomes almost silent. You begin to notice small tremors of awareness that often go unseen. The way your pulse sits in your fingertips, the way your chest rises just slightly slower each time, the way your mind refuses to stay still but flickers like the stars themselves. This flickering, internal and external, echoes back and forth until it is difficult to know where the sky ends and you begin. This confusion is not unsettling, it is comforting. You become porous, less bound by the solid borders of your identity. Something vast pours through you, and in exchange, you release whatever you no longer need to hold. Many spiritual traditions teach that the true self is not a fixed object, but a process, a flow, a continually unfolding event. Just as starlight takes thousands of years to arrive and still flickers in the final second of travel, so the self is composed of memories, sensations, desires, dreams, all streaming forward and shifting in their final rise into awareness. To watch flickering stars is to watch that same process at cosmic scale. Consciousness revealed as motion rather than solidity. Even when a star appears to hold steady in the firmament, it is moving violently, roaring with nuclear fire, spinning rapidly, being tugged by companion stars, drifting through space. Stillness is an illusion of distance. When you accept that flickering is simply motion seen from afar, you begin to accept motion in yourself as something natural instead of chaotic. There is a deep peace in giving up the demand for stillness. Instead of asking the universe to stop trembling, you start asking yourself how to dance with it, how to move with its rhythms without clinging. Flickering stars can teach patience, not the patience of waiting for something to change, but the patience of remaining open while everything changes. This kind of patience is softness, not passivity. It's the softness of a body lying in grass, surrendering to gravity and time, trusting that whatever rises, anxiety, wonder, confusion, calm, will eventually pass through like light through atmosphere. In that surrender, a new kind of strength is born, quiet, flexible, luminous. The more deeply you sink into this state, half waking, half dreaming, the more you begin to sense a truth that science hints at but philosophy sings. You are not separate from the universe you observe. The flickering starlight is not merely crossing space to enter your eyes, it is completing a circuit. Without your perception, that light would continue on endlessly, unregistered. With your perception, it becomes an experience, and in that experience, a new kind of reality is born. Consciousness, then, is not a spectator, but a collaborator in the act of existence. Perhaps this is why the sky feels so profoundly intimate on certain nights. It is not only above you, it is with you, responding to your presence. Consider gravity again, not just as a physical force dragging planets into orbits, but as an emotional force drawing your attention toward what truly matters. There are certain nights when your heart feels heavy, not with sadness, but with a mysterious pull toward meaning. This is gravity of the soul. It is what causes you to look up again and again instead of turning away. It is what keeps artists painting stars, poets writing about flicker, philosophers spinning ideas about impermanence. We orbit the sky with our attention, carried not by laws of physics alone, but by longing. Longing for understanding, longing for connection, longing to remember something we feel we once knew but have since forgotten. Something about who we are and where we belong. In such moments, the flickering stars begin to seem like breadcrumbs scattered across a dark forest. They do not point to a single answer, but they lead you inward, toward the realization that meaning is not found in certainty, but in participation. To watch the stars flicker is to participate in the unfolding of wonder. When that realization settles into your bones, even the simplest gesture, stepping outside, looking up, taking a breath, becomes ceremonial. You are not passing time, you are communing with time. You are not escaping life, you are entering it more deeply, guided by light that trembles because everything alive must move. Eventually, as the night wears on, your body grows heavier with gravity, and your thoughts grow softer. The flickering no longer demands interpretation. It simply is, and that is enough. You may even feel a slow smile rising from somewhere unexplained, a smile not born of happiness, but of recognition. Flickering stars, flickering breath, flickering awareness, all part of one great rhythm. Tomorrow, there will be noise again. Deadlines, conversations, decisions, uncertainties of a different flavor. But tonight, here, under this trembling dark, you have returned to the purest posture, being gently pulled toward what matters and letting yourself feel that pull without resistance. The universe does not command you to understand it. It only invites you to notice. Flickering stars are among its quietest invitations. Their twinkle does not shout. It whispers. It whispers of gravity deeper than mass, of time richer than clocks, of a belonging that cannot be measured but only felt. When you finally close your eyes in exhaustion or peace, or something in between, the stars will continue their slow burn, and your heart will continue its flickering rhythm, and both will go on in tandem, each illuminating the other. Sleep, then, becomes not a break from existence but a continuation of the same sacred flicker. only turned inward. You drift, you dream, you dissolve temporarily into the larger gravity of things. Thus, Part 6 ends not with a conclusion, but with a deepening, a quiet gravity not only of planets and stars, but of memory, longing, perception, and surrender. You are invited not to master this, but to let it move through you, slowly, lovingly, like light traveling across space until it finds a place soft enough to tremble into meaning. That place is you. There is a certain hour of the night when the sky stops feeling familiar. The constellations you thought you knew melt slightly out of shape, and the ordinary distance between you and the stars seems to collapse. In that hour, something curious happens inside the imagination. You no longer see the sky as scenery, but as a field of possibility. Every flickering point becomes a question, not only about what lies out there, but about what lies within you. Have you ever wondered what it would mean to stand beneath another sky? To feel the soil of some distant world beneath your feet and look up at a different canopy of trembling light? When the stars flicker above our heads on Earth, they remind us of two things at once: that we are infinitesimally small, and that we are strangely capable of dreaming beyond the limits of our smallness. Humanity has always carried that double awareness. We bow our heads in humility beneath the cosmos, yet we lift our eyes again with curiosity. An unstoppable, burning curiosity that says, "What else is out there?" The flicker of a star is where that dream begins, because not all flickers are created equal. Some are hints, subtle clues that there might be planets circling those distant suns. When a world passes in front of its star, the light we receive dips and trembles. Astronomers call it a transit. It is scarcely perceptible to the naked eye, a change of brightness less than 1%, but with sensitive instruments, that tiny flicker can reveal the size of the unseen planet, its orbit, sometimes even the chemistry of its air. In this way, flickering starlight becomes a door to worlds we have never seen, but whose existence trembles through the dark, encoded pulses of light. This idea, that worlds can be discovered through flicker, is profoundly poetic even before it is scientific. It means that possibility lives in what seems unstable. That knowledge grows not from steady certainty, but from subtle disturbance. The greater the flicker, the more alive the question becomes: who might live there? What stories might unfold beneath those alternate skies? In the silence of the night, lying in your bed or out on a patch of grass, you find yourself drifting between fact and fantasy. One moment you recall that exoplanets likely circle almost every star in the galaxy. The next, you imagine yourself standing under alien constellations, where different gods might have been imagined, different stories mapped in the dark. Our hearts travel faster than light. We arrive in places our bodies will not reach for centuries, or perhaps ever, guided only by the trembling messages of starlight. That is the strange gravity of curiosity. It pulls the mind outward until the inward world begins to change too. You start to wonder about perception itself. If we were born on another world, would we still find flicker meaningful? Would there be stories to explain the trembling of light? Would another being, somewhere out there, look up and wonder about us? Perhaps detecting the dim burn of our sun as a small flickering star on the edge of their night, speculating that someone might be living here? In that thought, flickering becomes not just cosmic but relational. It becomes a pulse that connects consciousness across unimaginable voids. I tremble, therefore I might exist. You tremble, therefore I might not be alone. It may sound whimsical, but this is where science quietly meets philosophy. Every time we detect a planet through the flicker of its sun, we are reminded that existence is lavish, that the universe does not limit itself to the single story of Earth. Instead, it produces countless variations: planets of ice, planets of fire, planets with storms larger than our entire world, planets where a single day lasts longer than a year. Some of these worlds may be lifeless, others may be lush. We do not know, but the flicker tells us they are there, like a whisper from behind a curtain, like a heartbeat felt through a wall. To think about these distant planets is to feel a stirring unlike any other. It is not the thrill of conquest or the hunger for resources, but a gentler, deeper calling, the possibility of companionship in the vast dark. Somewhere, perhaps, another consciousness has opened its eyes under a trembling sky and wondered if it was alone, perhaps composing myths from flickering lights, perhaps waiting for a sign that the universe is larger than its isolation. In that thought lies something beautiful and humbling. We might be someone else's flicker. We, who so often feel insignificant, might be lighting up another creature's imagination as surely as the stars light up ours. The science of exoplanets continues to advance. Transit photometry, radial velocity measurements, direct imaging. But beneath every calculation beats the same ancient heart of curiosity. What is out there? Who might we become when we finally reach beyond our own sky? The flickering star is not simply an object of study, it is a promise that the story of life might not be confined to a single world. To dwell on that thought is to experience a strange expansion of self. Your body lies here, small and vulnerable, perhaps tired, perhaps anxious, but your mind stretches outward across light years, touching possibility after possibility like fingertips brushing keys on a piano. In this way, the flicker becomes a kind of music, not composed of notes but of perhapses. And yet, even as your imagination ranges outward, the sky has a way of calling you back to presence, the grass cool against your back, the quiet throb of blood in your ears, the breeze slipping across your cheek, the awareness that, regardless of what wonders might exist across the galaxy, you are here, now, breathing beneath a flickering sky. It is both grounding and transcendent. You do not have to travel across the stars to belong to them. You already belong. You belong in your watching, your wondering, your capacity to feel moved by flicker. This capacity is not small. It is the signature of consciousness, the universe waking up inside itself in order to behold its own beauty. And so part 7 settles into silence not with answers, but with reverence. Perhaps one day human beings will truly stand beneath alien stars, their hearts flickering just as ours do now. Perhaps one day we will discover that we were never alone. But even if that day never comes, the flickering light of distant stars has already changed us. It has made us curious. It has made us tender. It has made us aware that the very act of gazing outward is also a journey inward. Whether there are others or not, the sky teaches us what it means to become aware of our own longing, and in that longing, there is greatness. So, when the hour grows late and your eyelids grow heavy, and the stars above begin to blur into bright whispers scattered across the dark, let yourself feel what that flicker has stirred. Let it rock you towards sleep. Let it remind you that the universe is both larger and more intimate than you can imagine. To tremble is not to be weak. It is to be alive. And as you drift, remember, somewhere far above, a star flickers, not to illuminate you, but to remind you that existence itself is unfinished, unfolding, full of possibility. In that thought, may your dreams open wide as galaxies, and your heart stay tender to wonder. There is a particular hush that falls over the world just before dawn, a hush so delicate that even the stars seem to know they are about to be replaced. Their flicker softens, not because the air has grown calmer, but because the first hints of sunlight are beginning to bleed into the upper edges of the sky. This is the hour when night is still alive, but already dissolving, when the universe feels closest and farthest away in the same breath. If you are awake in this liminal moment, You might feel as if you are not just watching the end of a night, but the end of a dream you never quite want to leave. The stars begin to fade, not all at once, but gradually, like thoughts slipping from memory, until only a few bright ones remain trembling on the horizon, refusing to surrender. Their insistence on shining, even as the world brightens beneath them, feels almost heroic. This final flicker of the stars is where everything we have explored comes to rest. Throughout the night, the twinkle has represented uncertainty, impermanence, mystery, longing, knowledge, grief, imagination, companionship. Now, as each star prepares to vanish into daylight, the flicker becomes something even more profound, a testament to endurance. To flicker is to refuse to disappear quietly. It is to offer one last pulse of meaning before yielding to a new phase of existence. That is why these moments just before sunrise can feel so emotionally charged, not with action, but with tension, not with sound, but with expectation. Something is ending, something is arriving, and in the thin space between, you understand in a deep, wordless way that this is how life itself moves, from darkness to light, from uncertainty to clarity, from dream to waking, from yesterday into today. The flicker is the seam between these states. As a watcher of stars, you have become aware of much. You now know that twinkling is caused by atmospheric turbulence, yet you also understand that it symbolizes how perception filters reality. You know that stars are mortal engines, burning themselves down, yet you understand their light keeps traveling long after they are gone. You know that planets orbit other stars, detectable through tiny flickers of light, yet you also appreciate that every flicker is a doorway to possibility. As dawn approaches, your role shifts. No longer merely a receiver of light, you become a participant in cosmic rhythm. You are awake at a time when most of the world sleeps, bearing witness to the quiet courage of those last stubborn stars. Perhaps this is why ancient cultures placed such significance on the morning star, Venus blazing with fierce brightness just as all others fade. It was seen as a symbol not only of guidance but of persistence, the last lamp burning in the darkness, defying oblivion. Venus does not truly flicker the way distant stars do, yet because it must still pierce the wiggles of the atmosphere, it too shimmers at low altitude, appearing almost alive. To behold it in these final moments is to be reminded, survival is not always loud. Sometimes it is as gentle as a flicker refusing to be extinguished before its time. And so the stars continue their slow, dignified retreat. One by one they slip behind the veil of brightening air, leaving behind no sound, no trace, only a memory of having flickered. Yet this memory is not trivial. It has changed you. It has taught you not just about astronomy, but about existence. You lie there beneath a sky that is turning from black to cobalt to pale blue, and you realize everything meaningful in life participates in this rhythm. What arrives must one day depart. What shines must one day fade. What flickers does so not as a sign of weakness, but as a sign that it is alive, engaged in the moment just before transformation. At the edge of sunrise, flicker becomes a whisper of perseverance, the last breath before stepping into a different state of being. Some people resist this truth, clinging to nights they wish would never end, believing that holding on is the way to keep something precious. But the sky teaches otherwise. Letting go is what allows new light to appear. The last flicker before daylight is the universe showing how to surrender with grace. Do not interrupt the rhythm. Simply pulse once more with everything you have. And trust that what comes next will carry the echo of who you were. When the sun finally breaks the horizon, it is not just light that floods the world, it is possibility. Yet even though the stars are no longer visible, they remain with you, not above, but within. Their teachings settle into the mind like seeds. You move through your day remembering that beauty does not depend on stability. That knowledge often grows out of uncertainty. That existence itself is a flickering between being and becoming. You remember that the universe speaks not through language, but through light, and that the light we receive is always shimmering, signaling, unfinished. And perhaps most importantly, you remember that you are made of that very same light, born of stars, returning to stars, and that to flicker is not to fail, but to participate in the ancient pulse of everything. As you step away from the night and into the day, you might feel a lingering softness, a gentleness that is hard to describe. It is the softness of one who has witnessed something sacred and does not need to explain it. Each time you blink, you carry a tiny flicker behind your eyelids. Each time your heart beats, you feel a subtle tremor of existence. Each breath in is like dawn beginning. Each breath out is like a star fading. And all day long, beneath the bustle and noise, there remains this private knowledge. The sky trembles, and so do I. That trembling is enough. It means we are alive. It means we are part of the vast, unfinished poem of the cosmos. So let this be the final flicker of night in your mind, not an ending, but a turning of the page. When evening comes again, as it always does, and the first stars begin to peek out above the rooftops, remember what they are telling you, even in their smallest shimmer. You belong here. You are part of this. Do not fear the trembling. That is where the meaning lives. Close your eyes or open them wide. Either way, the flicker will continue its gentle teaching to be present, to be uncertain, to be luminous, even if only for a moment. And perhaps tonight, when the sky darkens once more and the great orchestra of flickering light takes its place overhead, you will not simply watch, you will listen. Not for answers, not for certainty, but for that quiet message carried across impossible distances. We flicker, therefore we are.